Hi YouTube, it's Kathy, and this is my weekly entertainment wrap-up for October 12th through 18th. This week I read 3 books, I watched 3 shows, I watched 1 movie, and I listened to 1 book. First I read Fata, which is the first in the Dave Brandstander series, and I'm gonna have to get my hands on some of the other ones. This is a book that caught my eye when I was creating the Queer Detectives on the Case quest for Pagebound. Because this book was published in the 70s, the main character is an insurance investigator who is openly queer on the page. And that's back when that was illegal in 49 out of 50 states. In this book, it seems like this one guy has disappeared, and it looks like he probably died in an accident. However, there's no body, so he has to investigate to see if this person is actually dead before they pay out the insurance money. He's meeting different people from this guy's family and life along the way and just trying to figure out what exactly happened. For the most part, I very much enjoyed this. You kind of got to go along, figure out his thought process, learn new things about these different characters. I also read some of the introduction material at the beginning, so I found out that the person in this that maybe or maybe hasn't died seems a lot like the author himself, which I just found fascinating. There were a couple of elements to this that I did not particularly like, such as at one point there's this young kid that just kind of shows up in his house, and it turns out this kid has had a crush on him since he was like even younger, and he does rebuff his advances, but not forever. And that's just not my favorite thing to see, especially because it really has nothing to do with what's going on in the book. I don't think we needed that to happen, and I hope that character never comes back. Like I said, this is the first in a series. I think there's a dozen of these, and I'm going to have to try to track down more of them. Next we have Hamnet by Maggie O'Farrell. At the very beginning of this book, it gives you 3 context points. 1, Shakespeare was a guy that existed. You probably know about him. 2, when his son was 11, he died. And 3, 4 years after that, Shakespeare wrote Hamlet. This book then goes through kind of a dual timeline of when Hamnet is 11, and we see kind of a day where he's just trying to find some help because his sister is sick. And then we go backwards in time before his parents have actually even gotten together, and we see them get together and the circumstances of that. I should be completely obsessed with this book because, hello, I love theater, I've studied a lot of theater, I've read a lot of his plays, I've seen a lot of them in action, and I'm a little bit obsessed with this idea because in this book, William Shakespeare is not named at all. He's just called either the Latin teacher or Agnes's husband or something like that, but he's not named whatsoever, but like we know who he is. Also, his wife is called Agnes and not Anne because in her father's will she was actually written down as Agnes, so I guess she went by Anne sometimes and Agnes sometimes. So all my life I've known her as Anne Hathaway, and Hathaway is also a name that doesn't come up at all, and that's because it turns out there's not lots of verifiable facts about this family. But not knowing that ahead of time, I was just really confused, being like, okay, why are we calling these characters different names? Why can't we just call them by the names that we all know them as? Although some of this is written beautifully, some of it is written in such a way where I got incredibly bored and my mind would just wander off, and that's because this author loves a list. So every time I was seeing incredibly long sentences with lots of commas, I was just like, oh, I'm not gonna enjoy this next paragraph, and my brain would just kind of doop-a-doop-a-doop-a-doop. Oh yeah, I should be paying attention. This was especially egregious for me for this one sentence that I was annoyed with so much that I wrote it down. Let me look it up. The sentence was, "The lines and lines of apples are moving, jolting, rocking on their shelves." Now to me, that's enough to know that people are having sex in the apple storage. However, we then get another page worth of description of what this kestrel is hearing happening in the apple storage, and I'm just like, yes, I understand, they are having sex. But you know what, not every writing style is going to be for every person, so I enjoyed this overall, but it was kind of a slog to get through some of those sections. Next we have When Katie Met Cassidy. Katie has just recently broken up with her fiancé, and as we find out soon into this book, it's because her fiancé was actually cheating on her with basically her only friend. All of her other friends are basically her ex's friends, so she doesn't really have any friends anymore, and we meet her on this morning where she's in this very new apartment to her. There's still boxes everywhere, she doesn't really know where anything is, and she's trying to find one of her suits because she has to get to work because she has this very busy day as a lawyer. When she gets to work, one of the people that's opposing counsel is this woman named Cassidy, who at first she mistakes for a man and then realizes her mistake and is like, this person is quite striking. That's interesting. From there we get 300 pages of, am I a lesbian? I might be a lesbian. I don't know if I'm a lesbian. I don't know if I like women, but I know that I like Cassidy. A good thing about this book is there are a ton of queer women in it, and I love to see that. A bad thing about this book is not a single one of them brings up the fact that you know, Katie might be bisexual. I'm not saying that this character has to identify as that, but that word was not used anywhere in this book. Either they were all just calling her a straight girl, or she was constantly going, am I a lesbian? I'm not sure. As though those are the only two options, which I assure you, they're not. Additionally, you get to be in Katie's head and Cassie's head, and when you're in Katie's head, she definitely has some views about butch women and some stereotypes and some things that I'm just like, this book is not my favorite. Like, there's this bit where she's snooping in Cassidy's apartment because she's there alone for a few minutes. She opens her underwear drawer and is shocked that she wears briefs. This actually rocks her entire world. So yeah, this one I actually don't recommend. It was fine, the writing was fine, but it's biphobic and kind of butch-phobic. As for the shows we watched the episode of Jetlag that just came to YouTube this week. This is the same series I've been talking about for the past 3 weeks, where they are playing tag across Europe, and something monumental happened in this episode, which was very exciting to see. In addition to that, the main 3 guys in this, as well as one of the guys that we saw on The Getaway, which is another show they produced on Nebula, got together and were actually sponsored by Magic the Gathering to play a round of Magic the Gathering, but in New York, so they had to travel to these different sections to get their mana before they could actually play the game. Listen, I don't play Magic mostly because there are too many rules that I will not understand while you're playing. Every card has its own rules. I will not get it. However, watching them go to these different places and trying to strategize is kind of fun. The actual gameplay, not for me, but that's only because I'm dumb and don't understand all the rules. However, very cool that they're getting these collaborations. This week we also watched episode 5 and episode 6 of the 20th season of Taskmaster, which continues to be very fun. What I really enjoy is you get to kind of know the contestants over the course of the season, and being able to be like, oh, this person's not going to understand this task whatsoever, and then is going to be really mad because they didn't understand it and therefore they didn't do very well. Or this person's just going to be silly constantly and it's great. Or this person's always going to show up and he's going to be grumpy and it's going to be funny. This is just one of those shows that has incredibly funny moments in every episode, and I love that. The final show I watched was the final 2 episodes, or Series 7, of Prime Suspect. In these episodes, Jane Tennyson is solving her last case before she is kind of forced to retire. She's been in the service for 35 years, they're kind of pushing her out, and at this point she has a little bit of a drinking problem, which definitely affects things that happen in this case. Also, I feel like she would have figured it out a lot quicker if she wasn't drunk part of the time, because I definitely figured out who the killer was way before the show did. But maybe that's intentional, maybe we're meant to feel like we bested Jane because Jane wasn't bringing her A game. Also, she does seek help for this, which I did like to see. And now I find myself having to pick out something else to watch on BritBox, so again, if you have suggestions, let me know. The one movie we watched this week was Muppets Haunted Mansion, because why wouldn't you? 'Tis the season. And on rewatch, the biggest feeling I had was how fun it is to see all these little in-jokes for anybody who's actually been to that attraction, which I have. It's kind of my favorite one. So seeing all of these little things that I saw on the ride that they've adapted for this special, kind of cool. Also the amount of just random famous people in it. Like, you wouldn't think that Pat Sajak would just be in a random Muppets movie. Darren Criss, Danny Trejo, Will Arnett, Nicole Yvette Brown. There were a bunch of people that I'm just like, that's very cool that you got to do that. I'm happy for you. As for the audiobook I listened to this week, that was Atmosphere by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I knew nothing about this going into it besides I've read most of her backlist. Very much enjoyed it, obviously. I mean, most of them are right here. I don't have all of them, but most of them are right here. And just based on the cover model, I assumed this was another book that took place in a decade before our own. This book is about a woman named Jane. I can't remember exactly which degree she has, but she's got a PhD in something science-y, something to do with the stars. However, her talents are being completely underutilized, so even though she has this very high degree, she's basically teaching like first-year science at some school. And she's pretty sure that she's assigned to do this because she's the woman on faculty. And one day she's talking to her sister who's like, oh yeah, I saw this commercial and I wrote it down. It was played at kind of the end of a Star Trek episode, and it was something about how they're actually going to let women be astronauts now and how people can apply to that. And Joan is very quiet about this, but she definitely puts in the application for this first round of astronauts, and unfortunately doesn't hear back. However, when the next round is opened up, she applies again and she is accepted. However, you have to go through so much training before you can call yourself an astronaut. But that means we get to see her going through all this training, which was very cool. The one downside to this is she does have to move about an hour away from where she currently lives, and her sister sees that mostly as a betrayal because her sister is a single mom, and Jane actually loves her niece. She spends so much time with her niece. And Barbara, her sister, is constantly being like, woe is me, I'm a single mother, nobody helps me out, this is so selfish that you're leaving. And it's just like, can you shut up? You're actually not a great parent, and Joan does a lot of the actual parenting. And Barbara remains infuriating throughout this whole thing. In addition to this, we also get to know the other people who are picked to potentially become astronauts at the same time as Joan, and there's a lot of interpersonal dynamics when it comes to that. Like I said, I didn't know anything going into this, I didn't know what kind of representation was going to happen in this, and I liked finding out as time went on, so I'm going to let you do the same. I just want to let you know that at the end of this book, I was in fact sobbing on my bedroom floor. So just keep that in mind. You might want some tissues handy when you're finishing this book. That's it for this week. If you've read, watched, or listened to any of these, let me know about it down in the comments below. On the way down to the comments, if you hit that subscribe button, that would be very nice of you. If you don't feel like leaving a comment but want to make sure that I know you were here, just leave me an emoji or a smiley face if you happen to be on your keyboard. Some people have asked if there's a way to financially support this channel, so I set up a Ko-fi account, which is a digital tipping service. The link for that, as always, is down below. You can like and share this as you see fit, and I will see you very soon. Bye!